30 Minutes with Ron. Hello, my name is Ron Gagliardi. I'm the host of 30 Minutes with Ron. Welcome to another edition of the show. We're going to be talking about a famous Cheshire resident tonight named John F. Kensett. My first two guests are sitting over here. This is Agnes Winook, and this is Joanne Pilarczyk. And we would like to have you tell us what you do in Cheshire and how you're involved with this.
My name is Joanne Pilarczyk, and I'm the director of Arts Place. And I have a abiding love for Kensett and exploring his life and history along with my colleague.
And I'm Agnes Vanook, and I was very lucky to be hired to work with Joanne, who brought me into the wonderful world of Kensett research.
All right, now, let me tell you a little bit about John F. Kensett from my point of view. I'm a retired elementary art teacher living in Cheshire. It's late 1996 or so, and I find out that there's a famous artist who lived in Cheshire, and hardly anyone knows anything about this guy. So I decided it was my job to let the world, at least the Cheshire world, know about John F. Kensett. So I did some research. I found out that there's a building in Cheshire that was the site of his house, and it is currently a place where Bliss Wedding Bridal Place is. And so I went to this place. At the time it was a funeral home, Alderson Funeral Home, and I asked the owner if we could have a mock wake of John F. Kensett. And it was on the anniversary of his death. And I hired someone, actually didn't hire someone, I asked a friend of mine named Joe Trifolo to be John F. Kensett. And so he dressed up in the costume of the period, and I'm going to hold it up right now. This is Joe Trifolo, dressed as John F. Kensett, and he made a recitation at this event. I also found out that John F. Kensett was a Mason, and I learned that at his wake, the Masons conducted the honorary Mason's wake that normally happens when a Mason dies. So I knew that there was a Cheshire Mason group, and I asked them to be part of what we were doing. And there was a gentleman named Sterling Jewett who played songs that were actually played at John F. Kensett's wake. And so that was the start for me. This was 1997. That was the start for me to have a quest to let people in Cheshire know about John F. Kensett. I actually went to the town council, and they agreed to name a corner after John F. Kensett. So you don't know this, but there is a corner, John F. Kensett Corner, here in Cheshire. Someday there will be a banner there, but it's right across from Cheshire High School. So that's the past with John F. Kensett. Now let's go to the present of John F. Kensett. A couple of years ago, Joanne Pilarczyk and some folks with the CPFA, Cheshire Performing and Fine Arts Committee, they decided to do a booklet about John F. Kensett. And I want Joanne to explain all about that.
Well, I was sort of similar to you, Ron, in that I was excited to live a block away from where a very famous artist had grown up. And I couldn't find any of his artwork until I traveled to Spain and saw it hanging in a museum, and it said, John F. Kensett, Cheshire, Connecticut. And no matter where I went then, I would ask at every museum to see the Kensetts. But when I mentioned his name in Cheshire, no one was aware of him. So Agnes and I wrote a grant, and we were awarded funds through the Connecticut Community Foundation to put this particular children's book in all the third grades in Cheshire. And at the same time, Agnes did research, and we did a video about his life as an adult, because he lived at a fascinating time. We know he attended Cheshire Academy. He might have attended a school that Bronson Alcott had on the Cheshire Green, Lewis M. A. Alcott's father, but we can't find a record of that. His dad got the patent for putting food in tin cans, but Kensett himself was a magnificent artist and painted with extraordinarily fine brushstrokes and in a style called luminism. And Agnes, the research she has done has just been a gift to the whole town in both creating the book and the video. And if you wouldn't mind talking about Kensett and what you learned in all of your studies.
But his childhood would be good.
About his childhood?
Okay.
Well, his mother was a New Haven native. Her father lived in New Haven, and his father was a president of Yale, and he was a professor there as well. From his father's side, his father emigrated from Great Britain. He had a very exciting life as well. He started out apprenticed as an engraver as a young man, and he didn't particularly, I think, like that work. He ran away to the United States, where he met Kensit's mother when they were married here in New Haven. And it's interesting because I think that his parents really formed the kind of person that he became. His mother, coming from a very religious family, her grandfather being a minister, Presbyterian minister, there was a lot of religious thought, and I think that comes through later on in his work. From his father's side, there was that creativity, both from being an engraver, which he was here in Cheshire. He and Mr. Shelton had an engraving business in town for several years. And also, as Joanne had mentioned, he was also creative in a different aspect, in the business aspect of trying to develop cans, putting food into cans. So these two different things kind of came together. And when you look at Kensit's art, obviously there's that creativity, but there's also that religious aspect. Mm-hmm. Most of his landscapes, when you look at them, the figure of the man is very small in this vast expanse of nature. And sometimes it's only a boat that you see on the horizon. So you're really seeing that religious in nature. Mm-hmm. I think that he was also later on influenced a lot by the Transcendentalist movement as well. That also gave...
Right. But he worked as a child with his father.
I don't know how much he worked with his dad. I know that he must have been influenced by the engraving, because he was very young still when his father transitioned from engraving to the can-making business. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure that living with his dad, it would have been impossible for him not to have seen what it's like to be an engraver. And he must have had some talent, shown some talent, because he's the only one of the 5 children who actually became an artist. Mm-hmm. His other brother went into the canning business. So yes, I'm sure he must have been influenced by his father. He actually learned the craft of engraving with his uncle, his mother's brother, in New Haven. So he spent much of his time up until about 1835 in the area, in Cheshire. Mm-hmm. And in New Haven. And again, the engraving aspect is very important in his art as well. It gives his artwork that linear aspect, right. The very detail-oriented aspect to his artwork. I think you really see that coming through as well. Mm-hmm. So although he really dreamed of being an artist, a painter, that the beginnings in engraving, I think, influenced him in a positive way.
Right.
It gave him that style that he's known for.
Now, his uncle's last name was Daggett.
Daggett, right?
Yes.
That's...
And that was also the name of the president of Yale, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Naphtali Daggett.
We probably should say when Kensett was born and when he died, because mm-hmm. you're the person who has all that wonderful knowledge.
Well, he was born in Cheshire in 1816, March 22nd. He lived here during his childhood, and then, like I said, in New Haven as an apprentice, learning the art of the engraving. In 1840, he achieved his dream of sailing to Europe, and he spent 7 wonderful years there. And when I say wonderful, I mean very wonderful, because, again, this was a very important part of his life. It's in Europe. He met his paternal family in England, his grandmother and his father's mm-hmm. brothers. But even more so, when he went to Paris and to Rome, that's where he meets all of the people who would become very important in the latter part of his life. Right. It's where he meets the patrons of the arts who would go on to buy his paintings. He meets all of the artists who were famous during that period, the writers, poets, government people, just a wide array.
Okay, now we're going to have to leave his life there for a minute
Okay.
because I want to get something that's going on currently. It turns out that there's going to be a massive celebration
That's
of
right.
Kenseth's birthday.
He's turning 200 on March 16th, 2016.
March 22nd.
22nd.
I kind of jumped the gun. Yes.
Yes. Well, I was born March 23rd, so I always identify with that March 22nd. All right, so tell
Sorry.
us what's going on. There's a committee. Who's on some of the names of, or some of the events, or some of the
We've
people?
invited everybody in town to join us. So we
Right.
have people from Suburban Garden Club and the Garden Club and Cheshire Academy and Cheshirepedia, Cheshire Historical Society, the Land Trust. And everybody has different ideas. It doesn't matter if it's something they're going to celebrate in their club or for the whole community. And lots of funny, wild ideas. Arts Place is going to sponsor a birthday party, and we're having a local potter make pieces of make pieces of
Pottery.
of pottery to put a free piece of cake on when you show up with this, and it will have Kenseth's name and birth date engraved on it.
That's Jan
and be sold.
Lesnikowski?
That's right,
Yeah.
for a limited time. We're having a banner contest so that the banner will hang outside Arts Place. It could be any type of birthday cake, but say Happy Birthday Johnny or John Frederick Kenseth. It's for all ages to apply. And we have many other fun ideas, as in having your friend be walking through Cheshire dressed up as Kenseth. At odd times, you might see him in Stop and Shop or down Main Street, and there'll be Cheshire sightings. Agnes has created a wonderful Facebook page and Instagram, and it's happening now with photographs every day.
Ah,
So
and there'll be a
we just-
website at some point.
There'll be a website or tied to our website at Arts Place. It's a great collaboration of the community and the melding of arts and history to celebrate this wonderful artist who ended up founding the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I mean, we should be so proud.
Right.
We're seeing what he saw, in town when we drive around and the steps we walk.
So there's actually a couple of Kenseths still in Cheshire.
Yes.
We don't say where they are because we don't want someone to visit the owner and then remove that from them. But I've seen one of the larger ones in Cheshire, and it's just magnificent. And I've seen some of his in museums that are really the luminosity is amazing. Tell us a little bit about his style.
Well, it's interesting. The period during which he painted, there was a style that was appreciated, and there was also the type of art that he wanted to create. So depending on which museum you go to, you see a wide variety of work and of two different types of styles. Some are a little darker, more of a woodland aspect. Then you have the other ones that are, like you mentioned, the luminist style, which are much more geometric. So it depends on where you go. So very often I think people go and they say, oh, is that him? Is that his work? Because there is such a difference, which makes it very interesting. But I think it's, you as an artist, you have to paint what people want to buy. He wanted to support himself as an artist, so he had to do some artwork that would be saleable at that time, that was popular at that time. But he was also a lover of art and wanted to express himself.
One of the best. And I'm sorry, I have to wind you up because we do have another guest coming on. But I want to thank you both for coming. And I'm sure the celebration is going to be fantastic.
We just hope everybody feels free to call us at Arts Place if they'd like to join this committee and come up with their own birthday celebration ideas. We welcome any creative thoughts.
Excellent.
Inspired by Kenseth.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
All right. We're back, but for you it was only a couple of seconds. Joanne has left, gone to the green room that's not green, and we have a new guest. This is Diane Calabro. She's still here. Agnes Winnick is still here. And Diane Calabro is the
president of the Cheshire Historical Society. Hi, Ron.
Oh, you did that so well. Congratulations. All right, so back to the story of John F. Kensett. Was it President Buchanan asked him and two other artists to be in charge of decorating of the White House or the Capitol?
The Capitol.
Capitol.
It was the Capitol. And yes, that was before the Civil War. And they were supposed to make an assessment of the way that the arts were being conducted at the time. And that finished, I think, in 1860. So he did spend about a year or two in Washington, D.C. And nothing ever really came of it. They did do a report, but unfortunately the Civil War put a stop to a lot of the arts.
Right.
The art community. It was quite an honor, yes.
Now we're going to jump to a terrible part of his life, which ends up being his death. What happened for poor John F. Kensett to leave this earthly sphere?
Well, he left much too soon, we feel. We would have loved to have seen where his art would have developed. It is a very sad story, but I think, again, it goes back to the type of person he was. He, throughout his life, whenever you read any letters about him from friends and colleagues or anything in the press, they always talk about what a nice, good person, a calm, a good friend, a helping hand. A lot of the things that he did was helping others, but for that situation, he and a very good friend, another artist in the late 1860s, had bought some property in Darien, Connecticut. And this was an island. It's called Contentment Island, and it was only accessible through a causeway at that time. It was a farm, and they bought the property. And one day when his friend happened to be leaving, the wife of this friend took him to the train station, and as she was coming back, the water rose, and so the causeway was starting to get flooded, and the horse and buggy that she was driving tipped over into the water, and she drowned, unfortunately. And Kensett, we don't know exactly because there are different tales depending on who was telling the story. He either went to try to rescue her, or he went in to retrieve her body. But this was in the fall. It was very cold, and she unfortunately died, but he contracted pneumonia. And he died in New York City in December, of about a month later. So yes, it was a very sad story. But again, it speaks to the type of person that he was.
Right. Okay, now that story, I assume, might be in this particular unit right here. Can you tell us about that, Diane, this notebook?
This is the John Frederick Kensett, a young artist's birthday adventure. We have this at the Cheshire Historical Society, and this is a project that your group really put together.
Yes, Joanne
did
was
a
instrumental.
fabulous job. It is the highlight of our third grade tours at the Cheshire Historical Society. And one of the remarkable parts about it is there are illustrations in here that match some of the places, rooms in the society, and for many of the young people, it's the first time they connect a picture with where it was drawn, and they have to make that huge jump in their imagination to say, wow, this is like magic. That's the most frequent responses. It's like magic to see the drawing and to see the scene that it was drawn from. But it really brings Kensett to life for them. It tells a wonderful story about Kensett, and it explains what Kensett's life would have been like as a child, the same age that they would be. And of course, birthdays, which are so extraordinarily special for young people.
Right. And Tony Ruggiero, who's a Cheshire resident, was the artist for this project. Did a fantastic job. Now, tell us about the Cheshire Historical Society in relationship to John F. Kensett. What do you have there that people would be interested in seeing?
Well, one of the things I'm very proud to say is that I have a Kensett. And when I go to the Cheshire Historical Society, in our exhibit room, we actually have what we've referred to as our small Kensett. It is physically small. Many of his pieces are quite large, but ours is small, and it's a study of Niagara Falls, and it's all tucked away behind plexiglass, but very viewable. And people can come to the Society and see our small Kensett anytime they'd like, by appointment or on our Sunday visiting hours from 2 to 4.
Ah. And there's some photos of Kensett there?
We do. Now, understand the year, right? This would have been 1850, 1860
60s.
period. It's not like people were taking selfies. So what I have is a picture that's maybe 3 inches by 5 inches. That was huge technology at this time period. And it, of course, is sepia, meaning black and white. It's not color. But it is a picture of John Frederick Kensett sitting in a chair, looking very, what would you say, stately?
Debonair.
Yeah, debonair.
As
That's a
well.
good word. Yeah, yeah. And it is next to our small Kensett portrait.
Okay. Now, how does the Cheshire Historical Society fit into this celebration that's coming up?
Well, we try to support anything and everything that Arts Place brings that we can. You know, most anything. You know, our goal is to keep Cheshire's history alive. And when Joanne and when Agnes came to us with this idea of a town-wide celebration of the Kensett birthday, we were so excited and immediately thought of the different ways that we could put this together. One of the very first things that we're going to do is for our Christmas party, which is December 20th, 2015, we're going to have an entire Sunday afternoon that will be a Kensett Christmas celebration, as if Kensett lived in our house. And we will have ornaments. All of the ornaments will be of Kensett works. Some will be of Kensett himself, of where Kensett lived in Cheshire. The house will be decorated as if an artist lived there. And I can't take any credit for the bulk of that decoration. That's being done by the Suburban Garden Club with Rita Giannetti. But for us, we will be there basically painting our house red in celebration of Kensett.
Ah, excellent. Now, is there some kind of a special thing that people will be drinking at that event?
There's another group in town. It's called Cheshirepedia, and they're hard at work trying to concoct a Cheshire cocktail, and that cocktail is spelt with a K for cocktail.
Kensett cocktail.
Kensett cocktail, that's it. And what they are working on are alcoholic beverages that would have been available at his time period. So that would have been rum, hard cider, and some maybe apple wines, things of that nature. And they're trying to come down with or concoct a cocktail that will have some components. And they had a lovely one that they had done with, I believe it was rum, and it had cranberries. Another one was with the apple cider, the hard cider. And I said, you know, this is all fine, but we also need to have a non-alcoholic version. So they're hard at work trying to make something that would be just as marvelous that would pair with that alcoholic version. So we'll have both versions. We want to have both of them, and perhaps even the contenders for whatever one isn't chosen, at the Christmas party. So that will be the beverages that we'll be serving at the party.
So these could actually come from Cheshire and go out to the rest of the world as the Kensett cocktail.
Well, the idea is to somehow get that recipe out to all the local restaurants, that they might also consider serving this with their dinners and through this Kensett celebration period. And we were thinking that it would be fun to have, say, Kensett desserts. I mean, this would be if restaurants could get on board with this, and
Right.
it really depends. I mean, that's a huge use of their resources. But if they chose to do that, people in Cheshire could go to the various restaurants and establishments in Cheshire and say, I would like a Kensett cake, I would like a Kensett cocktail. And the people there at the restaurants would know exactly what they're asking for and provide that to them.
Excellent. Now, I just want to let our viewing audience know that this small Kensett that's at the Society at one point was just hanging on a hook. And I've heard that it was a little tilted even, because there was a gentleman who was doing a raisonné, which was a work of all of Kensett's paintings and drawings. And they had heard that there was something at the Cheshire Historical Society, so they came to see it and take photos and learn about it. So after he saw this and the state it was in, he went to the president at the time and said, you know, you probably should make that attached to the wall a little bit more thoroughly so that someone just couldn't go and grab it off the wall and take off with it. So now it's actually screwed to the wall, I believe, and you said it has the plexiglass.
Yeah.
But you were telling me something about directions for the fire department.
Well, I just want to back up. We also reframed it. So it now has a gold frame around it, because prior to that it was just like an old, it was pretty bad. But now it's better. It's in a gold frame, and it is tiny. It is smaller, probably half the size of this notebook. And so now it's more resplendent in its gold frame. There's a plexiglass box around it, and there's a special tool that unlocks that plexiglass, and it's hanging in a special secret place at the Society. And just in case, I mean, God forbid, if there were a fire, the firemen have already, they're already instructed where this little unit is, how to get this thing off the wall, and that is the very first thing that needs to be rescued in the event that there was any issue with our building. The other piece that we have, an over-the-mantle painting, that's the second choice. Get those two things out of the house, we'll worry about everything else as we have to,
Right.
but those are our two most precious things.
Excellent. Now we're getting close to the 2-minute point of our show, and I always like to ask my guests if there's anything that they wanted to say that I didn't touch upon when I was asking them questions. So let's start with Agnes. Is there anything special you want to tell us about Mr. Kensett?
Oh, there's so much to talk about with Kensett. You're asking the wrong person. I guess the impression I would like people to come away with is that that he was a wonderful painter, and that it's that you can see his paintings in a lot of museums, even here in Connecticut, and in most of the states. Most every state has at least one museum that has a Kensett in it.
Wow.
So wherever you go, don't forget to ask if one of them happens to be hanging.
Excellent. A Cheshire resident. All right. Diane, anything we missed that you wanted to talk about?
I just want all of Cheshire to hear about the birthday celebration, participate in the birthday celebration, if not through the Cheshire Historical Society, then through Arts Place. It is certainly worthy. It's something that I am very, very excited about, and I am so excited to be partnering with the Arts Place group. They are the best part of my day when they call or email me.
So that's the story, ladies and gentlemen. You may not have known about John F. Kensett before, but by the time all of this happens, you will definitely know about John F. Kensett. He was an amazing painter, wonderful person, and one of Cheshire's most notable residents. And that's the story of John F. Kensett. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you've enjoyed learning about John F. Kensett, and perhaps you'll come to the Cheshire Historical Society and see their Kensett. Thank you very much.